Hey everybody, it's Master Gallengeist here, bringing you my review for the latest episode of Supernatural Patience. And I really thought this was a really good, solid episode. It did a good job of balancing, again, the overarching story arc with Jack and bringing in the monster of the week with a wraith and all that stuff that it was dealing with. So I really like how they've kind of kept the consistency from last season, doing a pretty good job of balancing the whole story for the season, or at least what we're getting, at least probably till the season break, and then kind of like a monster of the week, kind of like problem of the week scenario. So we start off and we see this psychic closing up her shop and everything, and this dude comes in and she's like, "Oh, we're closing, but all right, you can come on in." And he starts saying this stuff that like he's got this problem or whatnot, asking if she doesn't already know it because she's like, "Well, what's your deal?" And he's like, "Well, I thought you were psychic." And she's like, "Well, I read auras," and then proceeds to try and read his. But goes crazy and shows this kind of monster face, and then he takes out a knife and stabs her hand going through to the table to keep her there, and he's like, "Oh, I guess you were the real deal." And then pretty much proceeds to bring out his like wraith sticker kind of thing, and then just like suck her brains out. It's like, oh shit. So of course we then get to the boys. We see Dean drinking and listening to the Rolling Stones, and then we get to Sam, who goes to check in on Jack and gives him the message on the USB drive with the computer from his mother. And it was kind of funny because Jack doesn't know how to operate a computer yet. He probably has maybe the basic concept of what it is, but they're like, "All right, here you go." And it was kind of cool seeing Jack like listen to everything that's going on from his mother, her telling him that he can choose to be good. He's not Kelly, he's not Lucifer, he's himself, and he can like choose to be that. And of course, Sam's kind of in the hallway listening, but he gets a cell phone call, and we hear this other person on the line saying it's good to hear his voice, and we find out it's Missouri, this one woman that we haven't seen since season 1, who's we find out is friends with the psychic that got killed. And of course, it's like, all right, we need to figure out what's going on with that. So of course, we see Sam on the phone with someone as Dean comes in, and he's just hung up on Jody, pretty much sending her to take care of Missouri Mosley. He talks about the whole situation with Dean, and he's like, "Well, we got Jody on it, so even though it's been a while since we talked to her, and she's got some things going on, I've sent Jody onto it because we need to be here because of Jack." And Dean kind of starts knocking him like, "Well, I'm going to go and like help because if you want to sit here and babysit the Antichrist, that's your whole deal." And I was like, whoa, Jack's kind of a big deal. He's a super powerful entity that needs help and guidance. Otherwise, that sneeze you're talking about could destroy all of space-time. So, yes, Sam kind of had the right idea to delegate this to a capable hunter, Jody, to figure out what's going on. But of course, Dean's more in the pissed off kind of mode because he has taken it on himself, pretty much the guilt of like everything that happened. But of course, he's showing it outwardly of focusing it all on Jack. So we just hope that he's able to deal with it. But of course, we'll get to that point eventually because as we see, him and Sam are butting heads, and this will hopefully get him to confront some of the stuff that they've done because Dean is being fed up with like losing people, and Sam is kind of fed up with like losing people as well, though trying to go about it in a different way. So we get to the Impala driving off. We see Jody and Missouri kind of talking and figuring out that this was her protege, Missouri's protege as a psychic and all that. And then she's like, "Oh, yeah, I've always loved that car," as Dean pulls up and he hugs Missouri first, then Jody, and they're like, all right, kind of what's going on here, but like Missouri kind of beats it to him and says like, "Honey, I'm sorry for your losses," because she can read people. And asking if he's like all right and everything, and he's like, "Oh, I'm dandy," and Jody's like, "Something's going on here," because of course Dean doesn't tell anybody anything unless it's kind of like really pertinent, or even if it's pertinent, he still kind of keeps everything close to his chest. So Jody, off the bat, kind of knows, something's kind of going on with Dean. So they go inside and they get the lowdown. Brain sucked out. Okay, it's a rape and everything, and they're trying to figure out what to do. We get Missouri going through, touching things, Dean giving Jody the rundown that Missouri is able to read things by touching them, getting the lowdown on the wraith, going through, touching everything, and on the last part of the table with like the blood of her friend on it, she gets a vision of the future, and she's like, "Oh shit." And she says, "James." Is like, "Huh, who's that?" So of course we get back to Sam and Jack, and Sam is trying to essentially be the Obi-Wan kind of character to hopefully more Luke rather than Anakin Jack. And just be like, alright, let's try and train you. You don't want to hurt anybody anymore, or try and limit that as much as possible. So we got to work on your control and focus. So I want you to try and move this pencil. And of course Jack's trying to do it and nothing's happening, and Sam's just sitting there watching him. So we then switch back over to Missouri calling James, and we find out that this is her son, and she's trying to impart on him that he's in danger and everything, but he doesn't believe her and just pretty much hangs up on her. And of course Missouri then goes to Dean, gives the address in Georgia, and tells him to like go save her family and everything. And she's like, I'm gonna be here. I'm just gonna stay behind, say farewell to my friend. And Dean's like, I don't like that. And she's like, well, you don't have to like it. I just want you to save my family. And of course he's like, yes, ma'am, because he shows respect to Missouri. He's like, yeah, all right. And she's like, good, and thank you. Now, granted, she has seen that something bad's gonna happen to her family, so of course she's upset. Her friends died too. So, but she's still able to get that point across, and like Dean shows the respect that she deserves. So we then get back to Jack and Sam doing their stuff, and Jack is getting frustrated. He's like, I'm useless. I can't use my powers. And Sam's just trying to get into his head. He's like, alright, how is it like using your powers? And he's like, it's like breathing. It's like blinking. I don't know. And then he's like, alright, what about with Asmodeus? What happened there? It's like, well, no, maybe it was like it was in my head. And they're like, okay, try and imagine it like that. He's like, no, I don't want to. So there's something else kind of going on with that. A kind of push-pull thing possibly with like, whereas before, like when he was in the other sheriff's station, how it was like almost a knee-jerk reaction, part of like a bodily function to like throw someone across the room and doing the whole lights thing. Maybe with Asmodeus, he was kind of getting instruction almost, since he was able to kind of give better instruction on how to like open the gate of hell and get the Shadim out of there. We'll have to see. That's an interesting kind of aspect putting into that potentially, if you got enough kind of like will or whatnot to like impress certain things on the Jack. I was like, that's kind of weird, but it made sense then why you would be pissed off and not want to try and do that. So of course Sam's like, alright, let's take a break and everything, and then we'll have you relax, we'll try again later. So of course we then switch back to Missouri, and of course we see that the Wraith gets up, she's in there messing with these lithomatic gems, and of course the Wraith comes in, and he's like, I know what you are, you can spare me, and he's like, why would I do that? And it's like, why? I've got the control here. And of course, she's like, listen, I've seen how this all goes down. If I run, you catch me, you kill me. If I stay, you kill me. Doesn't matter. And of course, he's like, well, I guess it's time for you to scream. And she's like, well, none of that. And of course, it's like, either way, I'm going to die. But if I do it this way, my people are going to murder your ass. And he's like, you sure about that? And she's like, I am. And he's like, well, it'd be more fun if you screamed. And she says, tough. And then The way she goes out like that, just saying, tough, I'm not going to give you your satisfaction, as he kills her, is pretty great and a badass way to send off her character. So then we get to these kids in high school, and of course, we'd be like, oh, it's probably Patience. She's talking to her one friend, and her one friend's trying to get her to join the volleyball team and all that, but then goes off to the showers, and then out of nowhere the lights start flickering, and she like finds his blood and finds her grandmother, Missouri, there, and whispers her name, Patience, and she's got blood running out of her eyes, and of course she then wakes up and we find out that she was dreaming this. And of course she's then like, whoa, that's kind of freaked up. Now, before that dream ended, she was grabbed from behind by the Wraith. So it's like, okay, how's this going to work out? So she goes down, talks to her dad, James, and of course he's like, no, I'm going to be staying here. I got a client call and everything, working from home. And she's like, well, I kind of had this dream. It was a little bit weird. Grandma wasn't, so whatever. I'm going to school. So then, of course, we get into Dean at a gas station, and of course, what's on the TV? It shows that Missouri has died and everything, and they're like, well, he tells Jody, and she's like, do we head back? And he's like, no, she wanted us to protect her family. That's what we're going to do. So they are able to get to James's house, and of course, he first doesn't believe them, but they're able to say she's dead and pretty much time of death and everything. And he's like, I hung up with her. I hung up on her last night. And he's kind of just trying to deal with that. He's like, oh, God. And he's like, listen, we got to help protect you and your daughter. So, of course, we then see Patience in an eerily similar scene, kind of like her dream. We're talking with her friend and all that. And, of course, she's like hearing her grandma whisper her name and all that. When after she's done kind of like looking around a little bit, kind of trying to do a similar part to the vision she had, she gets back to her locker, locks it up, and there's the Wraith right there. So, of course, he kind of like slams her into the locker and thinks he's pretty much got the best of her. She then knees him in the groin and breaks off his like Wraith sticker thingy, and this kind of pisses him off. He chases after her, tackles her to the ground, and he's like, well, that hurt a hell of a lot, but this will grow back and tough on you. Which, right at that point, we then get a gunshot hitting him, and then he starts turning off. Dean's going after him, and Jody's kind of checking on Patience just to make sure she's alright. Dean, of course, is still trying to do everything, has to go around outside, and almost gets run over by the van that the Wraith is driving. So they get back together, and they're like trying to figure out what to do. Jody's like, wait a minute, you were able to, like, get him down and, like, take off the sticker? Damn, that's pretty good. And they're just like, this is kind of weird. I don't know why he's coming for me. Well, you're psychic. I'm normal. Yeah, I have, like, deja vu and everything, but I'm normal. My grandma was a fraud. And he's like, the woman you know as your grandmother, that's not the woman who would, like, run out on people. So, we see Sam and Jack then doing, like, well, go back to Sam and Jack doing their stuff. We see Sam has been just watching him on a camera on his computer while he's reading a child rearing book, but then he looks up and he sees that Jack's gone. He's like, shit. So he runs into the room, and we get a pretty interesting scene here that I really like, because Jack hadn't really left. Joe pretty much said that he moved the pencil and was sitting in the dark. I really kind of like how they set up this scene, because it looks like he's in a very dark place. He doesn't understand the world, and he's having really existential thoughts about what he needs to do. And he's talking about, like, listen. And, like, Sam's like, I know this isn't fun. And he's like, yeah, this is the opposite of fun. And he's like, what's going on? I've seen you do things without even trying. And he's like, well, it makes sense if I'm evil. And he's like, what? How does that make sense? And he's like, well, I'm trying to do something, the little nothing, and I can't do it. What if I can only do stuff when I'm doing evil or whatnot? And he's like, I don't think you're evil. And he's like, Dean does. He says he'd kill me. And of course, Sam's like, well, that's fucking great. That's going to really make this a lot easier, telling someone that you're going to kill them. And he's like, listen, because he's thinking maybe Dean should before he like hurt someone, because he killed his mom. He thinks he killed his mom, and all this stuff that's happened, and it's only been the first few days, and I've hurt people, and it's like, no matter how I try, like, I must be evil. I must be like Lucifer. And Sam's like, listen, Asmodeus tricked you. Dean, he's trying to like figure out how to say that. It's like, it's not your fault. You're scared to use your powers, and me pressuring you isn't helping. And let's call it until I figure out a better way to try and get you to use your powers. We're good. He's like, that sounds good. And then Sam like brings him in the light, gives him a hand and all that. He's like, listen, I don't feel that you're evil. And I know what it feels like to not belong, to deal with like a darkness inside of you. I know you're scared. I had Dean and Cass and family to help you, and I'm going to help you. And of course, he then reiterates that he doesn't believe Jack's evil, and then kind of leaves the room. And seeing Jack kind of like ruminate on that and think about that. So of course, we then get back to Dean and Jody and them trying to figure out, they're all in the house trying to figure out what to do. James is like, alright, we gotta leave and everything, so he's pretty much telling Patience to go upstairs and get everything ready while Patience is voicing her displeasure at not having a relationship with her grandmother because James didn't want the hunting kind of life for her and to have her in danger and all that. So of course she goes up and of course she like touches this brooch kind of pendant thing that her grandmother had given her, and we see the day of James's wife's death. And of course we had learned that James had called her a fraud because Missouri said that she would be alright. And she's like, well, not everything's set in stone, so that's why I kind of like cut her out. And we see that cutting out happen, and we see, of course, Missouri giving the pendant and everything and saying, I'll always look out for you, no matter what. And of course, we then get back to the present, and as she's like getting more stuff together, the Wraith comes out of the closet. We hear her scream, and of course everybody races upstairs, and the Wraith has taken her, and now they're trying to figure out where they went. Dean's using traffic cams, but they're unable to get a clear idea, but James has an idea and uses the gems that we had seen Missouri use, or like have in her bag, to use them to divine where Patience is. Because he explained, as he's doing this, that is what he did when he was younger and left alone to try and find out where his mom was because of how scared of monsters and scared of losing her he was. So then we get to Patience tied up, and of course the Wraith is doing his kind of stuff. Her grandmother was the best I ever had. She said that you were a psychic as well. I had it while because he had tasted her brain and everything, he was able to get that. And he's like, well, I can feed on you for a long, long time, but let's get to a taste test. And then we get this sequence of events that Jody, Dean, and James come in, and of course at first we see James get killed by the Wraith because it like used his sticker to go through his like neck and throat, and then we see Jody kill him. I'm like, holy crap! I was like, no! But then I'm like, wait a minute, she's getting a spin off at some point, right? And then of course we see Dean die. It's like, okay, this is a vision. Alright. So of course it's like, okay. So then we get to the actual thing happening, because we'd seen her eyes kind of like, not bug out, but kind of her focus intently, and then she's back to the present and is able to tell everybody, dodge this and everything, so everybody was alright. Jody kind of gets knocked to the side, the Wraith uses her knife, and we get into a nice kind of cool close quarters combat scene with Dean, where he like uses a rope to try and disarm him, but he is able to get the upper hand and use the knife and just take out the Wraith, and he's like, how the hell were you able to do that? It's like, well, I guess I'm psychic. So, of course, we then get to, like, the aftermath of everything, and they're, like, kind of, like, talking to Patience. She's like, well, what are you going to do now? It's like, well, I've got school in an hour, so I guess I'll go to Calc, and do all that. And it's like, well, what are you going to do with your gift? Well, my dad said just be normal and kind of suppress it. And Dean's like, you're right. this life, there's no joy in it. And even Jodie's kind of taken aback. It's like, yeah, it's not a easy life, but Dean's very down on it. Like, listen, if you can be normal, be normal. Don't. It's just pain, horror, and death. And we've seen that, like, losing everybody in such a short time has really put Dean in a really dark place. And, of course, Jodie's kind of surprised, and then as, like, Dean's walking to the other side of the car, Jodie kind of goes and talks to patients to say, listen, you don't have to listen to your dad or to Dean. Do what you want. Just make sure that you're not suppressing the gift for someone else. And if you ever need someone to talk to, here's my card. So I think Patience could be utilized in the spinoff that they're doing with Jodie and all that. So we'll kind of see. Her characters, well, they could do some stuff with her character. She's got a lot of potential because you could always use a psychic that can read stuff and kind of read the future. So hopefully if they do take her onto the spinoff, they can like flesh out her character more. They've got a good base for her. So of course, she was also making reference to Claire as well, and that because she had tried to do the same thing with Claire, tell her to do a straight and narrow, not be herself, and of course, that's why she went off on her own. So it's like, alright, we'll have to see how this goes. So of course, we then get to Sam and Dean in the bunker, and Dean comes in, and he's like, well, Jodie told me about Missouri, and he's like, how else was it? He's like, well, another day at the office, and then he confronts him about Jack, and we get this really good scene because Dean had asked if he went dark side. He's like, no, but he did told me that you told him that you'd kill him. And he's like, listen, I told him the truth. He's like, listen, you have that's really kind of messed him up. And he's like, okay, I know what you're trying to do, and this always ends bad. And Jack's listening in on this from the hallway. And he's like, well, what about me? I was the freak when I was drinking demon blood and everything, and he's like, listen, Dad told you to put a bullet in me. And he's like, listen, you deserve to be saved, he doesn't. And it's like, shit, that's really dark. It's like, you're supposed to save people and everything. And, of course, Dean fires back at him, you're trying to use him as an interdimensional can opener. Now, I think that is part of the equation of why Sam is trying to help Jack get his powers under control. But I think the overriding part is that Sam does see a lot of himself in Jack, and that he has the great potential to be good and to do evil, and that he wants to help this person choose good as much as possible. He's been down these kind of roads with doing this kind of stuff, and he just wants to help another person out. But Dean does have a right to be like, listen, don't try and just completely push this as that you're doing it out of the goodness of your heart. You want to see if he can open it up and get Mom back. It's like, listen, every time we do this, we lose people. Like, everything we do to try and like reverse something always ends up screwing us over. And he's like, fine. And he can hardly look at the kid, he says, because he sees everybody they've lost. And Sam's like, well, Mom had a choice. She chose to take that shot at Lucifer, not Jack. And then, of course, he throws that Cass was manipulated by Jack and promised paradise on Earth. And that got him dead. And he's like, you can forget that? I can't. And then that's kind of where we leave the brothers still kind of like in that locked kind of argument. And as we see Jack whisper Castiel's name and his eyes flare up. And it's like, what? And then we go and we see it fades and we see Cass on the ground. And it's in a kind of place similar to like a Thor comic that I read, that it's like a void kind of place. There's nothing around. It's all darkness. And, of course, Castiel hears Jack's whisper of his name, and he wakes up, and he kind of like gets up a little bit, and that's where it ends. It's like, oh shit. That opens up a lot of questions, like, was Cass really dead? If he was dead, was Jack resurrecting him? Or what's going on, because that's a big thing if he can bring back people from the dead. That's a big kind of power thing, and especially an angel, because that's going in the realm of almost like God territory. And we don't know how this is going to play out, because Cass is in a place that is nothingness at the moment. We don't know how he'll be brought back and what repercussions that'll have. So that opens up a lot of exciting possibilities, and really, I like this episode for actually getting the confrontation a little bit more on the, like, out in the open with Sam and Dean, because at first, now granted, we're only a couple episodes in, they were kind of tiptoeing around each other. They're like, all right, you have your side, you have mine. But once they start kind of like going into each other's territories, they're like, they're going to have to deal with it. We're going to have to see which one kind of wins out. And what's going to happen once Cass comes back into the fold. And what that is going to do for, like, the angels and demons once they learn that Jack, this Nephilim, can bring back people. It's like, oh shit. So, those are my opinions on the episode. Tell me what you guys think in the comments below. If you liked it, if you didn't like it, if you agree with me, if you disagree with me. Also like and subscribe, and I hope you have a good day.